Season 3, Episode 1 begins at the exact second Season 2 ended, almost like the story never paused at all. David is running through the desert, the weight of betrayal and heartbreak still heavy on his shoulders. But this time, the danger chasing him is far greater than any army Saul has ever sent. After failing to capture David, Saul has fallen into a deeper darkness, a desperation that twists every decision he makes. His humiliation pushes him into a rage that spreads through the kingdom like wildfire. And instead of hunting David directly, Saul decides to destroy him where it hurts most: his family. Word of this terrible plan reaches David just in time, and the moment he hears it, his heart sinks. He knows he must act faster than ever before. With no room for hesitation, David gathers his loyal soldiers and races across the harsh wilderness, pushing through exhaustion and fear until he reaches his family. There is no time for explanations, no chance for goodbyes. David takes them all and flees toward Moab, praying that this journey will buy them safety. But even as he saves them, David knows something inside him has changed forever. He is no longer a young shepherd running from danger. He is a leader forced to protect everyone who believes in him. Once his family is hidden away in Moab, David returns to the land that has shaped him, this time heading toward the dark caves of Adullam. These caves, once a refuge, now become the place where the fires of war begin to burn. Before David can even gather his thoughts, new threats rise from every direction. Rumors spread that the Philistines are invading again, taking advantage of Israel's weakness under Saul's collapsing rule. David has no choice but to prepare for battle. Surrounded by men who trust him more than their own king, he steps into his role with a new strength, one born from loss, betrayal, and the prophecy placed upon his life. But the danger does not come only from enemies. Saul hears that David has returned to Adullam, and with nothing left to lose, he sets out to destroy him personally. His army, weakened and shaken by Samuel's final curse, marches anyway, driven only by their king's madness. As the dust rises from the ground behind them, David feels the threat closing in. Torn between fighting Saul or running again, he finds himself standing at a crossroads he never wanted to face. Ending this war could be as simple as striking down Saul, yet something deeper holds him back. Something sacred. Seeking guidance he cannot find in any man, David turns to the ephod carried by the priest who escaped Saul's massacre. In the stillness of the cave, surrounded by flickering torchlight, he asks God for the truth. The answer shakes him. He must flee. He must leave Adullam. He must run again, even if it breaks the hearts of the soldiers who are ready to die for him. With no time to argue, David leads his men toward the harsh cliffs of En-Gedi, a place where only the desperate dare to hide. Every step echoes with suspense, because Saul is closer than ever. The winds howl through the rocks, the shadows stretch longer, and the tension builds until the air itself feels dangerous. And just when it seems David has slipped out of Saul's reach, fate brings them face to face in the most unexpected way. Saul enters the very cave where David is hiding. David's breath stops. His men freeze. The entire season opens with a moment so charged, so fragile, that one wrong move could change the destiny of Israel forever. And this is where the first episode is preparing to leave us, right at the edge of a decision that could end Saul's life or prove David's unshakable loyalty to God's plan. The rise of King David begins here, not with victory, but with the hardest choice he will ever make. Inside the cave at En-Gedi, time seems to stop. David stands only a few steps behind the man who has made his life a nightmare, the king who once loved him like a son, but now wants him dead at any cost. Saul is unaware, exhausted from the chase, unaware that David's blade is close enough to end everything. David's men whisper urgently, insisting that this is the moment he has been waiting for, the moment God has delivered his enemy into his hands. Their words burn inside him, tempting him, pulling him toward the easy path. But David's heart refuses to surrender to vengeance. Instead of killing Saul, he moves forward silently, cutting only a small piece from Saul's robe. The cave trembles with tension, and when Saul finally leaves, David steps out after him, revealing the torn cloth with a voice full of truth instead of anger. For the first time in a long while, Saul's rage wavers. Shocked by David's mercy, he withdraws for a brief time. But the peace that follows is fragile, temporary, and destined to shatter. While Saul retreats, David's life shifts into constant movement. The deserts, mountains, and forgotten lands of Israel become his new home. Yet everywhere he goes, more people join him. Warriors, families, tribes, people who see in him the courage and humility that their king has lost. The rise of David's influence spreads fast, reaching even the powerful land of Paran. Here, an encounter will change the course of his journey. David meets Abigail, a woman known for her wisdom, strength, and grace. Their meeting begins in the midst of tension and danger, but Abigail's presence calms the storm inside David. Over time, she becomes not just a companion, but a new source of stability in his chaotic life. Through all of this, Saul remains obsessed. His hatred twists deeper, melting away the last pieces of reason he once had. He hears rumors that David has relatives and allies in the wilderness, and he begins hunting them too. But David refuses to strike back, even when he has the power to end the war instantly. Every encounter between David and Saul becomes a test of character, a reminder of why David was chosen to be Israel's future king. Later, as David travels through the scorching lands of Ziph, fate brings him face to face with Saul's army once again. Night falls, and David secretly approaches the enemy camp. With astonishing courage, he walks right past the sleeping soldiers until he stands over Saul himself. His spear and water jug lie within reach. One strike could bring peace to David's people and secure his throne. But once again, he chooses restraint. Instead of killing Saul, he takes the spear and jug as proof and escapes into the darkness. When Saul awakens and realizes what happened, the truth hits him harder than any weapon ever could. David has spared his life not once, but twice. And yet, instead of changing, Saul sinks even deeper into despair, knowing his days as king are numbered. The kingdom begins to fracture. Enemies gather at the borders. The Philistines, sensing weakness, grow bolder and stronger. Israel trembles on the edge of collapse. David sees what is coming. He knows the storm Saul cannot stop is approaching. So he makes a bold decision, one that shifts the entire direction of Season 3. David seeks refuge in the Philistine territory, entering the city of Gath, a place he once feared, a place where enemies now see his potential. Surprisingly, the Philistine king welcomes him and gives him control of the city of Ziklag. This becomes the turning point, the moment David steps from survival into leadership. In Ziklag, David builds a foundation of strength. He leads his men into battles against the southern kingdoms, one victory after another, proving that he is not only a warrior, but a leader destined for far greater things. Each triumph spreads his name across the land, each step brings him closer to the throne. But while David rises, Saul falls. His kingdom crumbles, his armies weaken, and his desperate attempts to hold on to power push him deeper into ruin. The tension stretching between these two men becomes unbearable, twisting every part of Israel's future. And as Season 3 continues, this tension will explode into a war that decides everything. While David grows stronger in Ziklag, the entire kingdom of Israel sinks into a darkness it cannot escape. Saul's enemies are no longer just outside his borders. Now they rise from within. Advisors abandon him, warriors lose faith, and whispers spread through the land that God's favor has left the king entirely. The curse Samuel spoke before his death begins to unfold piece by piece. Israel's armies tremble and scatter, but Saul refuses to accept reality. He clings to the throne with shaking hands, terrified of the prophecy he once ignored. As his fear deepens, he begins making reckless decisions that endanger everyone around him. Meanwhile, David's life moves in the opposite direction. In Ziklag, he has finally found a place where he can breathe, at least for a moment. Here, his leadership flourishes. Day by day, he transforms from a wandering fugitive into a powerful commander. His warriors, once scattered and uncertain, now stand united under his command. They train, they prepare, and they fight with a confidence born from watching David's faith and courage in every decision he makes. But even in this new season of strength, the path ahead is filled with shadows. The Philistines begin gathering for war again, planning to strike Israel at its weakest moment. Their armies grow larger, louder, and more organized than anything Saul has ever faced. David watches as they prepare, sensing that this will be the war that changes everything, the war that sets the future of Israel forever. He knows he must choose carefully. If he fights for the Philistines, he risks becoming the enemy of his own people. But if he refuses, the king of Philistia may turn against him, and he cannot afford another enemy. The tension presses on his chest like a weight. In a surprising move, David marches with the Philistine army toward the battlefield, prepared to show loyalty and maintain safety for his people. But the Philistine commanders do not trust him. They fear that in the heat of battle, David will turn against them to win favor with Saul. Their suspicion forces David to return to Ziklag, and though he does not yet realize it, this rejection becomes a blessing disguised as disappointment. Because while David marches home, the situation in Ziklag turns into one of the greatest crises of his life. Smoke fills the sky long before he reaches the city gates. The moment David sees it, his heart sinks. Ziklag has been attacked. The Amalekites, enemies lurking in the shadows, have struck while David was away. They burn the city to the ground, taking every woman and child captive, including David's own family. The sight of the ruins crushes the spirits of David's men. They fall to their knees, overwhelmed with grief, anger, and confusion. In their pain, some begin blaming David, shouting that it was his decisions that led to this disaster. The tension nearly tears the entire group apart. For a moment, David stands alone, carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Everything he has built seems to collapse in an instant. The fires in Ziklag crackle around him, reminding him of everything he has lost. Yet in this darkest moment, David does something he has done since the very beginning. He turns to God. Instead of giving up, he asks for guidance, strength, and clarity. The ephod becomes his lifeline once again. The answer he receives is powerful. He must pursue the Amalekites. He must not give up, and he will recover everything that has been taken. Renewed with purpose, David rises from the ashes. His determination reignites the spirits of his men, and together they set out on a relentless journey across the wilderness to track down the enemies who stole their families. The chase is grueling. Days stretch into nights. Hope fades, then returns, then fades again. But David refuses to stop. His leadership becomes sharper, stronger, and more unwavering than ever before. At last, they find the Amalekites celebrating, feasting over their stolen treasures. The sight of their joy turns David's grief into fire. In a battle that becomes one of the most intense moments of the entire season, David and his men strike with incredible force. The Amalekites scramble, panic, and fall. Not one family member is harmed. Every person is rescued. Every possession is reclaimed. This victory is more than a triumph. It is a declaration. David is no longer just a skilled warrior. He is a leader who can save an entire nation from the edge of despair. But even as David rises from this victory, something far more tragic is unfolding miles away. Saul, broken, terrified, and desperate for answers, makes a fateful decision that will seal his destiny. The stage is set for the fall of one king and the rise of another. And as Season 3 continues, the worlds of Saul and David will collide in a way that leaves the entire kingdom forever changed. Far from Ziklag's ashes and David's victory, Saul's world is falling apart faster than he can control. The Philistine armies gather at Aphek in massive numbers, forming a wall of spears and shields that stretches farther than the eye can see. Their war cries echo across the land, sending waves of fear through Israel's already shaken soldiers. Saul knows he cannot win. He feels it deep in his bones. The confidence he once carried, the strength he once displayed, all of it has vanished under the weight of God's silence. In his desperation, he seeks answers from anywhere he can, but no prophet speaks to him, no dream guides him, and no sign comes from above. The God who once chose him has turned away. Terrified and alone, Saul makes a decision that signals just how far he has fallen. He disguises himself and visits the Witch of Endor, a forbidden path he once outlawed himself. This moment becomes one of the darkest scenes of his life. Under the cover of night, trembling with fear, Saul begs the witch to summon the spirit of Samuel. And when Samuel appears, his words cut Saul deeper than any weapon ever could. Samuel tells him that the kingdom has already been torn from his hands. The favor of God now rests with David. The next day, Saul and his sons will fall in battle. Israel will lose. The prophecy seals Saul's fate. As morning breaks, Saul returns to his army with a hollow stare. The soldiers see the emptiness in their king, the dread he cannot hide. The Philistines advance, confident and merciless, pushing Israel toward Mount Gilboa, where the final chapter of Saul's reign will be written. Meanwhile, back in Ziklag, David receives news that shakes him to his core. The Philistines have begun their war against Israel without him. He was sent away by the Philistine commanders, but now he realizes this was God's way of keeping him from fighting against his own people. David feels the weight of the moment. He wants to help Israel. He wants to stand beside Jonathan. He wants to face the fate of his nation with courage. But he cannot reach the battlefield in time. Instead, he sends prayers toward the land he loves, praying that the people he once served will survive the oncoming storm. But the storm is already too strong. The Philistines strike with overwhelming force. Israel's lines collapse. Chaos explodes across the mountains. Arrows rain down. Warriors fall. Saul tries to hold the heart of the battle together, but fear crushes his resolve, and then tragedy reaches its most painful moment. Jonathan, David's best friend, Saul's noble son, falls in battle. He fights bravely until his last breath, trying to protect his father, trying to defend the kingdom that is slipping through their fingers. Jonathan's fall breaks Saul completely. The king, wounded and surrounded, sees no escape. Rather than let the Philistines capture him and torture him, he chooses to fall on his own sword, ending his life in the most heartbreaking moment of the entire series. The death of Saul marks the end of an era of victories, failures, and a descent into madness that began the day he first feared David's destiny. The Philistines take the bodies of Saul and his sons, displaying their victory with brutal pride across their cities. Israel crumbles under this devastating loss, leaderless and broken. When news of Saul and Jonathan's deaths reaches David, the world seems to stop. His heart shatters, not because a throne has been opened, but because he has lost the brother of his soul. David tears his clothes, weeping until his voice breaks. He mourns not just for Jonathan, but for Saul too, remembering the complicated, painful love he once had for the king who became his enemy. His grief becomes a heavy silence that settles over his people. But from this silence, something new begins to rise. The kingdom of Israel, searching for a leader, turns its eyes toward the only man whose courage has never shaken, whose faith has never faltered, and whose mercy has been proven again and again, even toward the king who tried to kill him. David has not yet claimed the throne, but everyone can feel it coming. The fall of Saul is not just an ending. It is the final doorway David must walk through before stepping into the destiny that has been waiting for him since the day Samuel anointed him as a young shepherd. And as the dust settles over Israel, Season 3 moves toward the moment when David's rise will ignite a new era, one built from the ashes of tragedy, loyalty, and unbreakable purpose. With Saul gone and Israel in ruins, the kingdom enters a silent, uncertain moment, a breath held between the fall of one era and the rise of another. Villages mourn, warriors bury their dead, and the people wait for someone strong enough to restore hope. For the first time, there is no king sitting on Israel's throne, no commander giving orders, no leader standing between the nation and its enemies. All eyes slowly turn toward one man, the man who has been shaped by exile, strengthened by battles, tested by betrayal, and guided by faith through every dark night, David. But David does not rush toward the throne. Instead, the weight of Jonathan's death keeps him still. His heart feels torn open.